Assalamu alaikum, hey, and welcome to the iLife Academy Coaching Podcast. This is Abdul Shahid, and we are actually on episode 11. Like, wow, subhanAllah, time flies. I get a lot of feedback from you guys, and it seems like it's really helping. So that's the goal. So my goal today, the subject today is how to feel more loved, or how to feel worthy, how to feel like you're good enough. You see, we're at the back end of Ramadan, and over the month I've been coaching a group of a mixed group, clinicians, doctors, therapists, coaches, just general parents, professionals, and a mixed bag of people. They're successful in whatever areas of their lives they're focusing on, and but there's one recurring theme that's come through, and I thought I'd talk to you about this today, because one of the challenges that we all seem to face, regardless of what background we're from, what professional standing we have, how successful we've been with our children, or with our careers, with our businesses, like whatever it is, despite the success that we experience in some parts of our lives, like we still have this this niggling feeling and these thoughts that constantly they're kind of there in the background, and they often come along as, I don't know if I'm good enough to do this. I don't know if I've got what it takes. I don't know if I'm confident enough. My self-worth isn't quite what I want it to be. Do I feel like, when you root it right back down to the core thoughts and beliefs that we have, we feel like we're not loved. We feel like we're not worthy in the sight of others, our loved ones, our husbands, our wives, our children, our colleagues, our bosses. Like, we don't feel like we're valued, and this is a struggle that so many people have, despite the success that they have already achieved in their lives. So often you hear people saying, he doesn't love me anymore. And this is a common one. Like, many people feel this. And in fact, it's not just he doesn't love me anymore. It's also she doesn't love me anymore. And men, they just won't say it. They just won't say it, but they think it. And it'll come through in an intimate setting where they're having a deep conversation, and in that deep conversation it comes through, and men don't say it explicitly. So most men won't even think about it. They won't even consciously think about it, but there's this horrible feeling deep down that I'm not good enough, or like some of my clients, like in conversations, the phrase that comes out is, what's wrong with me? That's like how a man would put it, and women are the same, right? Men and women are the same with this. You see, when you don't feel loved or valued, it's nothing to do with the gender. That's just something that we're experiencing. So why do people feel like they're not loved? You see, it's a difficult answer for a short podcast like this, but it can be boiled down to a few things that seem to run consistently in most troubled marriages, most troubled family relations, even with neighbors and like bosses, and when the human connection, where does it break down? And so, like, I'm going to talk about, I'm going to share with you like a couple of pretty major or at least 3 major areas where if you could focus your attention on these things, you could help to improve your relationship pretty quickly, right? Now, I'm going to point you in the direction of a few things, as I said, 3 things. But I suggest that you may feel it's too impersonal for you, right? Like the discussion that we're having here is too impersonal and it doesn't quite relate to your situation. And if that's the case, then I would suggest go to QuranicConnection.tv and check out the actual coaching, the emotional mastery, the deep coaching, and you will find within there like you can book a short call to have a quick discussion about what's actually going on with you, and we'll see if we can get to the bottom of that. But let's get back to this. So you may not actually need anything more than actually what I'm about to share with you in this podcast. So my advice to you is reflect deeply on what I'm about to share with you, and you may see something in your own marriage, in your own relationships, that really change the way you see your husband or your wife or your family member. And it's really about reflecting on this. So it's not about listening to this and I'm going to give you how to do X, Y, Z. The deep changes come from inner realizations that things aren't exactly as you think as they may seem to be, right? That sounds a little cryptic, but you're gonna get the gist of it as I go through this. So here goes. One of the biggest challenges that people have is that there is this deep fog of emotions that is blinding you. You see, what you experience when you're experiencing these emotions, such as anger or frustration, maybe annoyance at your spouse or your child, sadness, like a deep sense of sadness, or even boredom. Like people complain that they're bored in their relationships, right? They feel they have this ambivalent feeling, like it's not really going anywhere, and it's not inspiring them. It's not a relationship that's nourishing them anymore, right? So what you experience is a temporary form of what I would call vision impairment, right? In other words, you will not be able to see your loved ones through the eyes of love. When there is a like a vision impairment, you're not seeing your loved ones through the eyes of love, through the lens. Imagine you're wearing glasses, right? Like they're rosy glasses of love, but you're not wearing those glasses right now. You're wearing different sets of glasses, and you will see them through the emotions that you're feeling. See that the emotions, they're like a fog, and they almost blind you, right? So the emotions will act as a block to seeing who they really are, or seeing the person you want to be in that relationship with clarity. Imagine you see a person through the eyes of anger. Like you have this feeling of anger towards them. Or maybe it's not even towards them, but you have this feeling of anger inside of you, and you're looking at them through that. You're looking at them through the lens of anger. You'll be, like, ask yourself the question, will you be able to be compassionate towards them at that time when you're feeling anger? Or are you more likely to say something that you may later regret? And the truth is, most of us do the latter. We do the latter, and then we feel guilty and we feel regret. You see, we may still get angry about whatever they did. Like he did this or she did this. But that won't stop you feeling bad about what you did or what you said. People do this, And then they start to justify to themselves so as to make themselves feel better. Like, look, we've all been in that situation. Like, you're irritated, or you're angry, or you're frustrated, and then in that moment you say or do something that you later come to regret, and you feel bad. And then, just to make yourself feel better so that you don't have to feel that way, you start justifying it to yourself. And you find that people in abusive relationships do this all the time. So that's the first one. Like, when there's the deep fog of emotions blinding you. Like, it might be you, it might be your partner, and it may well be, and often very well is, both of you. So the second thing is, we have expectations that we impose on our loved ones. And this is a really big obstacle that so many people face. Sometimes the greatest challenge is, or are, the rules and expectations that we have that govern our relationships. We say things like, if he does this for me, I'll feel better about myself, or I'll feel loved, I'll feel worthy, I'll feel like I'm good enough. If, on the other hand, he doesn't do that, then I'm not going to feel loved, and I'm not going to feel worthy. I'm not going to feel like he cares or she cares. And imagine this, like a typical example. If he doesn't buy me flowers, that means he doesn't appreciate me. And the problem you have is that he thinks, from a practical perspective, in his mind that is, and he believes that it's a waste of money to buy flowers that are just going to die after a few days. Now, you will have a real problem if that's the case, because you believe and you expect flowers so that you can feel worthy, you can feel like you're good enough, you can feel that you're loved. And then he has this opposing belief that flowers, spending X amount of money on flowers, which are going to die after a few days, is a waste of money. So he thinks that it's a waste of money, so he doesn't buy you any flowers. So you have a real challenge now. You're doomed to feel unloved. And it's either that, or he buys you flowers thinking it's a waste of money. And then he has these negative feelings around that. So you have this challenge between the two of you, because you have an expectation, and if your expectations aren't met, then you don't feel loved, you don't feel worthy, you don't feel you're good enough. And he has similar expectations. And I use the flower as an example, but look, the guy, your husband, or you, the husband, like, you have similar expectations. You expect your food, you expect it to taste a certain way. And if it doesn't taste that way, then you feel like your wife, she doesn't appreciate you, and she doesn't make an effort for you to make the food you like. And that becomes a real challenge, because then when she puts in the effort to try and make you what you want, and then you don't even say anything like to show appreciation because you're not actually enjoying it, then she doesn't feel loved and you don't feel loved. And it's like this vicious circle. My wife doesn't like my tea, or my husband doesn't like my coffee. So we don't do it for each other because we feel as though the other doesn't like it anyway. And then we feel unappreciated because the other isn't making a cup of tea or coffee for me. So it's like this constant battle of expectations. And look, these are just simple examples of the kinds of expectations and opposing expectations that husband and wife have. And it's not just husband and wife, but like definitely it being an intimate relationship, like it happens all the time in the relationship of the husband and the wife. And when you have two opposing expectations about the same thing, you're bound to struggle in that relationship, in your marriage. Imagine you've been through a divorce. Like imagine you've already been through a divorce. And you're listening to this now and you realize that this actually happened in just about every single argument you ever had. So you're gonna feel as though you're gonna feel like you know what I'm talking about firsthand. And you may feel some regret around it. But here's the thing, look, there's no point looking into the past. Even if you're still in your relationship now, there's no point in looking into the past. But what would you do differently? This is a question that you should ask yourself. If you want to improve your situation, what would you do differently going forward? Because that's a really important question to ask. You see, you don't have to get to a stage of, separation or divorce before asking this question. The challenge that most people have is that they're too busy thinking about what they want and not what the other wants. And that's not always the case. Like sometimes most of the times, like we feel like we're busy thinking about what the other wants, but we just cannot keep each other happy. And it does often boil down to the fact that you have two separate opposing expectations. But that can be resolved. You can resolve these constant relationship issues by really working hard to figure this out. And it is very doable. I see it all the time with the people that I work with. And it's never too late until it's too late. And really the question is, who knows when it's really too late? Right? We make these things up. We're saying no, it's the end of the line. It's too late. It's she just done too much. Like I can't. It's not possible. Right? And I'm not saying it's too early or too late. Like only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. Right? However, ask yourself the question. The question's pretty simple. Ask yourself the question. Have you asked that question? Have you looked at your own expectations? Because one of the biggest challenges that most couples have is their own expectations of the other. For me to feel valued, for me to feel like a valued, loved, appreciated husband, my wife has to do X, Y, Z. And if she doesn't do X, Y, Z, then I'm not going to feel that. I'm not going to feel like she loves me or she appreciates me. And vice versa. The wife, she does exactly the same thing. Right? And so when you do that, you have a challenge. And imagine this. You've got that challenge compounded by the fact that you've got this emotional fog between the two of you. You're going to have a hard time. You're going to have a hard time to see each other for who you really are. And you're going to be too busy battling your own expectations. You think and feel like you're battling your husband or your wife, but you're battling your own expectations. Ask yourself that question. This requires deep reflection. And as I said at the beginning of this, you may want to go back and listen to this whole podcast again. You may want to listen to it and really reflect on what I'm talking about here. Okay, so the third thing is, and this is obviously at the root of it all, I don't feel loved. That's a statement that's running through people's minds. It's probably running through your mind. I don't feel loved, or I don't feel good enough, or I don't feel valued, I don't feel appreciated. There are different ways of saying this. Not everyone says I don't feel loved, but what runs through their mind is a variation of that statement. And so here's a question. You don't feel loved. Well, why not? What is it going to take for you to feel loved or for you to feel appreciated? This is a really important question. Have you asked yourself this question? Why don't you feel loved? And what is it going to take for you to feel loved? And you might answer the question with, he needs to show me that I'm worth something or that I'm valued. You might say, I just need him to tell me he loves me. And if he tells me, then I'll feel loved. Or it may be, she needs to do this. And if she does that, I'll feel appreciated and loved. I feel like I'm good enough. I feel like I can make this, I'm a good husband or a good wife. So what if he tells you this all the time, but you're just not hearing it? What if she shows you that love and appreciation all of the time, but you just cannot see it? You see, he tells you by making you a cup of tea at the end of the day when you're tired and you just want to rest. He tells you by taking the children out away from you so that you can have a break. Or he may tell you by buying you, this sounds really silly, right? But he may tell you by buying you new kitchen utensils or buying you, that sounds crazy, but, ask your friends. How many of their husbands do that? And they give them this gift, and the wives just look at them like, yeah, what do you want me to do with that? And I'm not joking. I've heard these things, and I don't want to say I'm guilty of that, but look, men, they do these things, and they think that this is what the woman would appreciate. And in his mind, he's thinking, I'm just thinking of ways to make her life easier, right? And you see that, when you see that as a wife, that probably angers you, right? And you're thinking, how is that showing me love, right? And so look, let me just tell you here, men and women are so different that you wouldn't believe. Or you probably do believe, right? He'll buy you something that he thinks will be useful to you when you really want flowers or you want chocolates. And he'll do something to lighten your load because he shows love in that way. And he doesn't know how to show affection the way you want to see it. And even if he does know, sometimes, men, they just don't know how to do that. He will want to get intimate, right? This is a recurring problem that people have. He wants to get intimate, and you're thinking, that's all he ever wants. Why can't he just hug me? And the thing is, that's how he shows you love. Get this. If you refuse, he's sitting there thinking, why don't you love me? And the more you refuse, the more he feels rejected. And he feels that he's not loved. You see, men and women, we show each other love in different ways. We show each other love in different ways. He will show you love in the way he knows or he thinks love is to be showed. And your expectations of love is in different things. So it's once again he's trying to show you love and you're trying to receive it. And what he's showing you doesn't quite fit your expectations. And that's a real challenge. And that's a challenge for you might be thinking, this guy, he's all, that's all he ever wants. And he's thinking, I'm really trying to show her love. I'm trying to, and she's just rejecting me. And then he gets angry, you get angry, and neither of you get anywhere. And the more he tries to get intimate, the more you feel used. Like this guy only cares about intimacy. He doesn't actually love me. And really what the challenge is here, that the language of love between husband and wife are very different. If we understand each other's language, even if we don't appreciate it, we could start to feel loved. Sounds crazy, huh? Well, let me give you a verse of the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Hunna libasun lakum. And they are, talking about the females, they are a clothing for you, a garment for you. Wa antum libasun lahunna. And you are a garment for them. Like I'm translating that literally, right? Now, some of the translators, they translate this as, you are a protection for each other. You're a protection for each other. But in the literal translation of this libas, it means clothing, like a garment. You see, the explanation of this verse is that we're covering one another. But imagine you are covering in the sense that you protect each other. That's on the one hand. But along with that, you are so intimately close that you fit like a hand and a glove. However, fitting like a hand and a glove doesn't make you the same. One of you is the hand and the other is the glove. Like your whole makeup is so different. Your desires are different. The way you see the world is different. And accepting each other and your language of love being different will help your marriage, will help your situation so much that you wouldn't believe. So look, I would suggest going back over this and really listening to this as many times as you need to. Allow it to sink in. Because if you really get this, if you really reflect upon this, then inshallah you're gonna see something. You're gonna see your relationship quite differently, and you're gonna see what's really going on there. And when that happens, it may actually help you to permanently change your relationships, inshallah. And if you feel you need more, like I said, go to QuranicConnection.tv and check out the emotional mastery. So I'll leave you with that. Jazakumullah khair. Until the next segment. Assalamu alaikum.